Moving on to pads. So the pad that I use is made up of 3 parts. So first up is the low pad, so I'm going to add that in and I'm going to send that to a patch bus. So this has created 2 channel strips for us. So instead of going straight to keys 2 output, I want this to go to a patch bus so I can take all 3 layers of my pad and put them through one channel where I can then use a single volume change in there. And that will become a little bit clearer as we build it out. One important thing to note is I'm using a patch bus here rather than a global bus because things can then get very confused between patches as you change if you have the same bus used for a group of instruments across multiple patches. If it's a global output, then you want that to be at the concert level, but if it's something that's just a group of instruments within a patch, it's important to use a patch bus because you can run into bugs. So I've loaded in my low pad channel strip and renamed it and changed the color so to keep it all nice and tidy. And I'm going to do the same thing as I did with the EP and set the gain so that the volume of being 0 is a nice volume that matches the other pads. So now I want to do similar thing to what I did with the piano. I'm going to set up the enable, disable, and pad volume, which is going to be the volume of the patch bus. So another thing I'm going to do is set the highest note of the pad to be B3. The reason for that is if you start playing pads and pianos together, the notes up here would just start to get messy and the pad just fills out the sound too much. And as you see when I add the high pad next, that'll add some nice higher frequency ranges so it kind of still covers that area without getting very messy at the top. As you can see, there's also this moving knob at the top there. So that's something I've set up with this patch to slightly change the timbre of it. So I'll just set that up. It's set up to modulation 1 again. So as you can hear, I've got this kind of moving texture in there that I can blend in, which I find in down moments can just add that little bit of musical interest that's necessary when there's not much else going on. It's also worth showing you the script plugin that I've made. It's called Pad. This was built for pads, obviously. It has the disable buttons like the other ones, but also it keeps track of which notes you're playing, and I'll show you why that's important. So if I disable this plugin and I play piano and pad with the pedal held down, you can hear that as I'm pressing more piano notes, the pad's getting louder and louder, and then I change the pedal and it disappears. So what's happening there is as the pedal's held down, as you keep pressing notes, it's layering up more and more, which doesn't sound very good. So this is something that it depends what plugin you're using. If you're using a synth, then often they will just re-trigger the note rather than playing another one. But I'm using sampler, so that doesn't work so well. It will layer them up. So turning this plugin on, now I'm holding down the pedal and it knows the note's being pressed and it won't trigger it again. So that means that as you play with the piano on top, the pad just stays there at the same level without layering up notes. So now I would add a higher layer to this pad. So we're renaming it, changing the color, and setting the layer range to match the low pad. And again, we'll set up the gain. So let's map some things with this. So first, I'm going to make it so I can change the cutoff. So I'm just going from 40% to 100% there. So I'm using the Valhalla shimmer on this to create the nice shimmery texture at the top. And the filter with the cutoff happens before that, which means if you swell up and then turn down the cutoff again, it will still kind of ring out a little bit, which is a bit smoother than if it just disappeared straight away. For some songs, you might not want that shimmer though, so I've got a button to turn that on and off. For the more kind of EDM-y songs, I found that works. That can work nicely as a pad. So these two layers blend really nicely together. The high layer doesn't have very much low in there because there's a low pass filter on it, and the low doesn't have much high in it. And instead of just having one where the cutoff changes, because the low pad stays in there at the same level on top of the high, it just blends really nicely together. Next up is the organ pad. So I have a knob that I'm going to use to blend between the normal pad and the organ pad. So I'll just set up that to increase the volumes of the organ and decrease the volumes of the pads as I change it. Okay, so the first thing to check is, are the volumes level? So the organ's a bit louder, so we'll stick a gain in there. So that's about the same. So one thing to note, as it crossfades, listen to what happens to the overall volume. It dips in the middle, so that's something that is because the way that loudness works is not linear, it's not a straight line. So we need to make it so as we turn that knob, it turns it in a curve, not in a straight line. We do that using scale parameter. So the high and the low pad need to go down, but not as quickly. And the organ needs to go up and meeting in the middle. So now if we try it, the volume stays roughly the same as we're changing between the two. So again, we need to set the organ layer to match the other pads.